Hello, everyone. This is Michaela, and you're listening to the End All the Things podcast. As a life coach and facilitator, I work with individuals and groups to empower their best selves to shine to the betterment of all involved. My goal is always to bring you closer to trusting the voice inside of you that is authentically yours. My job here is no different. In my journey through life, I continue to meet people who use their authenticity, their gifts, to grow, change, and serve through professional and personal endeavors. These people and their stories become my gift to you, for I cannot keep a good thing to myself, and I believe that they may inspire a part of your story to evolve. Hello, everyone. It's Michaela here, back with another episode for you of And All the Things. This one is going to be really interesting. I think you're really going to love it, and I'm going to start it by saying my guest has been unemployable. You heard me right, unemployable since 1992. However, Ande Lyons is a 4 times founder, a former global startup mentor, a serial podcaster since 2012, and currently the host of the popular Don't Be Caged by Your Age podcast, where Ande helps folks dissolve internalized ageist beliefs so they can thrive after 65. Together, we explore so much, but we focus in on the complexities of aging, purpose, and community. And at the end, we throw in some conversation about women and sex. So we really cover all the things. But we really hit this head on by confronting ageism, by exploring the value of intergenerational relationships and the importance of maintaining your purpose throughout life. No matter where you are in your aging journey, and let's hope it's a long journey, this conversation will help understand the importance throughout of self-discovery, self-love, and creating spaces where we can thrive. This conversation is as much a celebration of aging as a slap in the face to all of us to get our heads right about the potential of what comes next. So, all that being said, I offer to you Ande Lyons and All the Things. Please enjoy the show. All right, friends, let's jump right in to my conversation with the ever so stunning Ande Lyons. And we're going to start with a little bit about why I really want to have this conversation. And quite frankly, it started when I read the book Tribe by Sebastian Junger. He is a war journalist and experienced PTSD upon return. Short version is I started looking at how we commune, how we create our tribes. And the thing that I found so lacking in the way we do it today is creating that multi-generational space where my children are learning from people who have been here a lot longer, right? And when I began to look at that, I really started to see the ageism, the discrepancy in how we treat our different generations. So my guest today is going to help us to make some sense of that. So Ande, you have been a lot of things in your life, but today one of the primary things is you're talking about demystifying ageism. How in the world did you come to be in this space and why?
Oh my gosh,
Catch us
Michaela.
up.
I'm so honored to be here, and a big shout out to all the listeners who are tuning in. This is a really challenging time in one's life as they age. And I had been in the startup ecosystem for decades. I'm a 4 times founder, tech company, food manufacturing. I've done it all. I've raised millions in venture capital and thousands in angels investments. But what I never really talked about was my age in this group. And I was a mentor, and I had a pitch event for startups every single month for 3 years in downtown
So
Boston.
cool.
And
A lot of
what I,
questions about that too.
yeah, what I noticed, and it used to, of course, delight me, but also amaze me, was that my biggest fans were under 30. And it wasn't like, oh, I could be your mother. It was like, I could be your grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
But what I also saw were investors or other mentors saying to founders, explain the business as if you were telling your grandmother. And I'd be like, oh boy, nothing
Oh,
like
cringe.
shaming the elders. We have been building tech companies since the 70s, since we used punched cards to do, to do
Mm-hmm.
everything with mainframes. Technology is not an age thing. It's a skills that you choose to learn, but it's not that you can't learn it because you're old. So I saw that. So in the summer of 2022, when I turned 66, I said, I'm coming out. I'm going to come out about my age. I'm going to start aging out loud. And I wrote a post on LinkedIn
Wow.
called Don't Be Caged by Your Age. And for those listeners here in the US, you know how we have that Route 66, the
Mm-hmm.
sign for Route 66. So I got a sign and I held it in front of me. But when you look at the photo of myself, I almost look like apologetic, like, yeah, I'm 66. Don't hate me. Right.
Right.
And I talked about that. I talked about ageism in technology and in tech companies and this whole veneer about when you age out, you lose your ambition, that you no longer want to be part of things, and that retirement means going away. And I just said, this doesn't seem right. And it doesn't feel right. In fact, when I turned 50, and that's how I started the post office, when I turned 50, I said, okay, my entrepreneurship days are over. It's a younger person's game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, fast forward 16 years, I've had two more businesses since then.
Right.
And I've become a global startup mentor since then.
Incredible.
So, you know, ambition is ageless. And so in this conversation, the post went viral and I got comments from folks of all ages telling their woes, like, oh my gosh, I can't get hired for nothing. And I've got
Mhm.
decades of this extraordinary experience, or from people who had reimagined what their aging period would look like and pulled on threads and were willing to take chances and learn new things. And I was fascinated by this. So when it came time to launch my sixth podcast since
Wow.
2012, I said, this is the topic I want to talk about. There, we have got to stop devaluing and belittling and infantilizing
Mm-hmm.
folks over 60. You can see it all the time. Oh, hi, sweetie. They talk to you like you're a toddler.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody needs that. And so that's how I got into this, because I know now I'm 67. I know that I have so much more to give. And as I interview more people who are in their 70s, in their 80s, they're vibrant. They've gone back to school and earned a degree, or they taught themselves new technology and they're totally immersed in AI and doing all the
Wow.
things, or they've explored other areas of their life. Maybe they were a lunch lady at the elementary school. Now they're doing work with preschoolers or doing something else that really makes their heart sing. And this is why your work is so important, Michaela, is you can't tap in and find these things out about yourself as you're aging without someone to help you, because it's hard enough that we have the institutional
Yeah.
ageism, which is basically, look, you're permafrost until you retire. So we're done with you. Or you have society who says, oh my God, you're not aging, are you? You got to stop
Oh,
that. You
that's
got to
going to
be
be
afraid.
expensive.
Yeah. And you know, we got to take care of that because you cannot be looking old.
Yeah. Oh gosh,
What?
yes. Here are the creams. Here's the serums, whatever you need. Here,
Hey, here are the
injections.
filters and good lighting. Um, but, you know, think about what that does to someone's
Mhm.
internal worthiness.
Right. I mean, we're here to fulfill our purpose, right? And whether you think that's of a religious purpose or wherever you want to take it, we are here to fulfill our divine purpose, our unique purpose. And there's no timeline on that. I mean, there is a final destination. Sorry to spoiler alert, but we will all die. And that should be the day where we're like, all right, I did the thing,
I
right?
did the thing. And also, and you brought up a really good point about the purpose. Humans need purpose to get
Mhm.
out of bed, to get off the couch.
Yeah.
But again, what happens is all those little internalized messages that we don't even know that's the story
Mhm.
we're telling ourselves can prevent us from thinking we do need purpose. And a lot of people are like, I can't wait to retire,
Mhm.
but they don't really plan for what they're going to be doing. And 7 out of 10 retirees, pre retirees, want to keep working, they want to be engaged,
Mm.
and they're actually very apprehensive and anxious about this time period.
Yep.
So you have two types. You have the, I want to keep working, but not at this hustle pace. Or you have the folks who are like, oh, I can't wait to retire. But then they do retire and they're sitting there 3 months later and they don't know why they're depressed. They
Mhm.
don't know why they have low energy. They don't know why they're all of a sudden going to the doctors all the time.
It's because we live in a binary world, right? Where it's either good or bad, yes or no. And I'd like to live in a yes and it's yes, I want to retire and I want to live a life with purpose. And I will tell you, I coach a gamut of age ranges, right? I'm a little nondescript in that area because the human experience is the core connection, right? Like that's the thing I work with. And I'm working with a woman now. We started chatting in January. She's not planning on retiring for another year and a half, but she wanted to know that there would be someone with her when she was ready and what it would look like financially, what the time investment would be. She's all over it. And we're not going to start our work for another 6 months or whatever she wants, right? Whenever that anxiety starts to build again. But I so admire that. I'm like, way to go, right? Like,
Proactive.
right? She's like, what am I going to do with my time? I'm like, let's figure it out. But we don't, at any age in life, we very rarely spend enough time asking those questions of, well, what do I want to do and how do I get there? So I'm curious about on this sixth podcast, you're interviewing people over 60. Is that your audience, right?
Well, those tuning in are 55 plus, but I only interview over 60, Michaela, because I want to bring representation. I want people to see what does
Mhm.
72 really look like and engaged in
Mhm.
doing things, or how did that person, they're a
I love
private
it.
investigator, how did that happen, right?
Yeah. So if I were to, and as a former English teacher, words are very important to me, and I get things wrong, and I want people to say, that didn't land right. Have you considered trying this turn of phrase or whatever? So there's a part of me that is a little hesitant in this conversation because I don't want to be ignorant or disrespectful with my language, but I also don't know the language to use. I don't want to be rude and be like the older folks, right? I don't want to, like, we mentioned the word like the golden generation or legacy. I don't know, but how do I talk about this group? Very
This,
precious group.
yeah, and this is a great conversation to have because it's fluid right now.
Mm.
There are folks who are very comfortable calling these the golden years. And
Mhm.
there's other people in what we call the pro-aging movement that
Mhm.
say, oh no, golden. That's again, you're caging someone by their age
Mhm.
with the word golden. Senior. I mean, really, senior citizen came about as a political strategy. They
Hmm.
had to glop people into a category. And so, not even 100 years ago, I think they decided to just go ahead and call this age group senior citizens.
And
Well,
that
that's
begins at what age?
62.
52. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so a lot of folks are fluid about how are we going to talk about this age. And also, it's more of a stage than an age,
Mhm.
right? But what I have learned in interviewing those thought leaders in this category is that the age group of 55 to 80, instead of retirees, it's the Renaissance period.
Ooh, that's invigorating.
Right? And
Yes.
then from 81 to 100, it's legacy. You're not done. You're still building something, right?
Oh,
Isn't
oh,
that
that's
great?
good. Renaissance up to 80. I mean, there's so much science now that we're going to live even longer and longer, right? I heard the other day that my kids might have the potential biologically with the science that we have today to live to like 150. What are we going to
No,
call that? But for now, I like the idea of Renaissance 55 to 80 because there's strength and courage and praise and purpose to that. And then legacy is, I mean, listen, that's what we're here for. I want my legacy to be written every single day, right?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Hmm.
And And that's what's so wonderful about you, Mikhail, is that you're so thoughtful, not only about the words, but of your intentions. And it's wonderful that you role model that and represent that. I
Thank you.
I'm aging out loud. And it's the most liberating thing I could have done for myself because until I aged out loud and said, yeah, I'm 67, until I
Hmm.
was able to look in the mirror and say, yeah, this is how I'm supposed to look. I'm
Hmm.
67, right?
Yes.
Based on my DNA, gene pool, and whatever, I've got the barnacles on my face and the brown spots and the wrinkles. That's changing and shifting my mindset to see the sparkle in my eyes and my smile and my energy.
Mm.
That's what real beauty is. In fact, I shared on my YouTube channel Andy McDowell getting interviewed by an Italian journalist who said, so, what's it like to lose your beauty?
What?
And first,
What?
Andy was thought maybe there was a language barrier, but no, that was really where the journalist was coming from. And she says, I haven't lost my beauty. It's just different.
Oh my gosh, I'd want to retort with, what is it like to never have had any?
Yeah,
Like you.
geez. Oh yeah, there's so many things. And
Oy.
so I would love to see us take the word old and just be like okay with it. I
Hmm.
mean, your decades of lived experience, first of all, it's a privilege to be over the age of 60.
Yeah.
You know too many people who have died too young from some
Hmm.
awful disease or accidents,
Yeah.
and we're still here. So, hello, get out the clappers and the pom poms and do a dance.
Not for the first time, I have chill bumps, but my cousin, God love him, he is, still say is my age, right? So we grew up together and he died at 31 from a very, very aggressive cancer.
Oh, so
And
sad.
from that point on, thank you. It 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 just hit something home to me. And aging is a gift denied many. And anytime someone complains about getting older, I'm like, nope, the opposite, the alternative sucks. But then the question is, what do we do with this life we've been given, right? So
Right,
what I'm curious about with that demographic that you've been interviewing, is there a commonality, a theme? Is there a part of their personality or a life experience that they share that has gotten them to, because man, that takes some courage, I think, to age so loudly, right?
right,
So what's the tie that binds? Because that's what I want for our listeners is to
right.
grab a hold of that and figure out how to tie it into their story.
I have to tell you, there's so much that goes through the aging process. There's a deeper level of radical self love
Mm.
and embracing what is that
Hmm.
you need to do. And that's work. And you need a coach 9 out of 10
Hmm.
times to do that work. And what I've noticed with the folks I've been interviewing, a lot of them at that 60-year mark had some challenge, physical challenge, burnout, some depression, because internalized were these beliefs that said you're too old to, you missed the boat, you should have, regret,
Hmm.
wistfulness, all of that. But what they chose to do was the hard work of self exploration, pulling back the layers and discovering, in some cases, rediscovering their joy, their passion, what fuels their passion.
It's
And
making me want to weep because this, what I want for people, sorry to interrupt, but what I want for people is to get there sooner, right?
yeah,
Let's do this at 20. Ah, forget it. Let's do this at 15. Because I work with young women in their 20s who were like, I've checked all the boxes, I'm doing all the things, and I'm so sad. And
well,
it
and
breaks my heart. I don't want them
yeah.
to wait till 60. I don't want them to have another 40 years of this sadness because I mean, for nothing other than they're going to be potentially raising children, and I don't want that to carry forward. But how do we get there sooner? Like,
Well,
what's the message that these stories can tell me and those younger than me?
Well, I think we have to understand that we are on a journey and we're
Mm.
like a patchwork quilt. So what's going to float our boat at 15 and be
Mhm.
what we're going to be so
Sure.
passionate about is going to shift. And it's going to change. It's something else is going to be informing us of what we're going to be passionate
Mhm.
about. What happens to many humans, though, is that they get really good at a bunch of things, right? But are they enjoying doing those things? And what happens is they get rewarded for being good at that.
Yeah.
And they say, I'm successful.
Yep.
I get rewarded financially or the feedback or the accolades, but they're not happy because it's
Mhm.
really not what they want to be doing. Or they may be complete. I've done that. I'm ready to move on. What do you
Mhm.
mean you're ready to move on? You're successful at that. Stay with it. I think we have to look at life as the soul journey that it is, that that we're deepening our understanding of our own humanity and the rest of humanity while we have these experiences that teach us adversity and how to the golden seeds that we find within adversity and
Mhm.
within the pain, that we can have greater empathy, and then we bring even more of ourselves to the world. And it's through those moments and experiences that allow us to be fully expressed if we choose to be.
Hey, hey there, amazing listeners of And All the Things. Thank you for being on this journey with me. The fact that you're still here, I have to assume this podcast has sparked your curiosity, encouraging you to think of life beyond your current boundaries. Now it's time to take that energy and channel it into a transformative journey where boundless joy awaits. Introducing The Course for Joy, brought to you by Joy Enterprises and me, Michaela, your joy coach. Life gets busy, I get it, but self-care matters and should not take a back seat. That is why we've crafted a 4-week self-guided adventure to seamlessly fit into your routine. In just 15 minutes, a few times each week, our enlightening video lessons and engaging workbooks will guide you through self-discovery and bring you closer to growth. As a special bonus, when you enroll in the Course for Joy, you'll receive an exclusive 50-minute live coaching session. We'll celebrate your progress and create a roadmap for your journey ahead. Are you ready to paint your life with vibrant joy and purpose? Visit myjoycoach.com/course to learn more about the transformative Course for Joy. Let's amplify your joy and ignite your purpose together. Stay tuned for more inspiration and insights right here on And All the Things.
And I think what happens is, as we go along on this journey, we forget that we can reimagine and repurpose and find different passions because it's going to change. During the Renaissance period, you might spend 5 years just jamming on landscaping, or you might be jamming on something else, and then you're like, I'm kind of done with that. We have to stay flexible and adaptable,
Mm-hmm.
because as things shift outside of us externally, then we can find ourselves shifting in what we crave or what we need and what we want more of. And also, we have to honor the physical limitations of our bodies. There's so much, certainly in the pro aging movement, you're seeing people do things that I would never have done even in my 20s. I have no interest in that. And it's great. And I love that they are able to use their bodies in that way. But a lot of people, they might be
Mm-hmm.
going blind, deaf, they've got physical challenges, arthritis, things that are keeping them from moving. They
Mm-hmm.
still have purpose. They still have gifts that they can bring to the world. So, yes, I think what you want to teach people to do sooner is always be tapping in to what's next. Where do I want to be next at this stage? All right. And am I doing all the things that can really build on who I am? Or do I need to make a shift? And can I find that courage to make that shift, which, you are helping so many people. So I don't think it's a one and done. I think
Right.
it's just teaching folks to always be reevaluating. And this
Mm-hmm.
is, Michael, this is what happens to a lot of folks too, especially the high performers in whatever industry they're in. They reach 60 and they start thinking, who would I be if I were not this? Right. And that's a whole nother conversation because we over identify sometimes with our role, whatever that is, whether it's the C suite or with an orchestra or however we are in the world.
And I think that's where we have to diversify our passions and our interests so that we're not just the one thing, right? Like I love my children, but I don't want to just be their mom, right? I love my work, but I don't want to just, well, my work is kind of intermixed into all I do, so that's not a fair, but you get the point.
Yeah.
And I think so one of my core values in my business and my life is stay curious. And if we can start to imagine what could be, which is why I find podcasts and representation such as the work you're doing today so important. If I can't imagine that at 70 there's this vibrant life, I'll never, because if I'm only watching TV, if I'm only watching the news, if I'm only, looking at everyone that gets a watch at retirement, I think that's it, right? And you mentioned it, but I see people retire and sit on their chair and then wonder why they need back surgery, like, or however it transpires. So if we can see the potential and the possibility, then it's like, well, maybe what if I could, right?
Right.
Maybe what if I could? So if the thing is a little bit of curiosity, a little bit of introspection, what would you say to someone who did have the disability and couldn't quite, perform, do all the body movement? How do we inspire people who have that physical limitation? Because that's very real, even if it's a simple shoulder, but we have to keep moving, we have to keep
Right.
engaging.
Well, certainly we all know there's a video for that on
Yes,
YouTube, the best search engine for yeah, there's great
you're
exercises you
right.
can do from your chair.
You're
It
right.
can just be moving your wrists and your fingers. There's so much there, but there's even more. I interviewed on I might have been episode 8, Sandra Allison, who at the age of 58, the company had downsized. She went to go look for work. She could not find a job. So she learned how to be an incredible resume builder
Oh,
and started a business of resume services for folks who needed to beat the system so they could get hired at any age because the system,
wow.
as you know, the scanning system
Yeah.
will kick you out
Yep.
based on certain things, words that they see. And so now she's busier than ever. She is a gamer. When she told me she was a gamer, I thought, what, bridge? I mean, I'm so bad with my own biases, right? No, she's been
Yep.
shooting, she shoots zombies for leisure, and she's done that before when she used to do it on mainframes. But she can barely see and she has physical limitations. But at this age of 72, she just had to hire someone else. Her business is so busy.
Wow.
So when you have that representation, or Julie Dennis, who will be episode 14, I believe, um, she's a private investigator. She talks about how she can do everything from home because she too, losing vision, walking is really hard due to severe arthritis and other challenges. But wow, she's again vibrantly living life. But what folks do at this age and stage on the Renaissance period is that they have what's called an energy portfolio. And I know you'll love this. Just like your investment portfolio, you need to invest your energy differently. So
Mm-hmm.
you have a deeper understanding of how the elder body works and
Yep.
the aging body works. And so you're going to pace yourself differently.
Mhm.
And having been, many of the boomers and Gen Xers were raised in the serious hustle culture.
Yep.
Fortunately, our millennials and Gen Zs have much better values and are not willing to sacrifice themselves on the altar of some corporation.
Yep.
But our age group definitely learned how to hustle 12 hours a day for the
Yep.
work, if not more. And so now you're
The company
repacing.
man mentality,
Yeah.
clock
Now,
in, clock out, and
right.
you're in it to win it.
Yep. And give it all and forget about your life.
And your health and all the things that
All
you're
the
going to
things.
need when we give you the watch at retirement.
Yeah. So, that's part of how you start structuring. And again, you work with someone or behind me. Well, I have a book here called Don't Retire, Rewire,
Very
written by
good.
Jerry Sedler and her husband. And she wrote the first edition in 2001. And she's a data scientist and extraordinary decades of incredible experience, including executive editor, et cetera, at Working Woman magazine for
Yeah.
a decade, and so many things. She gathered a lot of data, and now it's on its third edition. This book has the exercises for you to find out what fuels your passion
Mhm.
and then help give you more purpose in life, but also make feed your pocketbook, right? And so there are all these things that are
That's great.
happening during these ages, 55 to 80, that you're navigating differently than
Mhm.
you would at a younger age of
And
your
that's why it's
body.
important to check in regularly, right? Like, okay, where was I? What am I doing? And where am I going? What do I need to get there? And we
And
don't spend enough time on that.
and that
So it,
curiosity, I just love that word because that's how you shift the story that
mhm,
you're giving yourself about what
correct.
you should be doing. And greeting cards, if you want to be an anti-aging advocate or a pro-aging advocate, do not buy a greeting card that has ageism. And
Mhm.
there's tons of them. And it's
Mm,
all about getting old and old this, old that, and old biddy and old. We just need to stop that.
that's interesting because you're right. Where we spend our dollars is where we're really casting our vote on what is and is not okay for us,
Yeah.
right?
And I think,
Um,
Michaela, with your work too, that what's so important for exploring and staying curious for this time is the fact that studies do show that pre-retirees want to keep working, and it's not just about the money.
mhm.
This connection, I mean, we've all seen the blue zone information out there, right?
Yeah.
It at the end of the day, it really isn't what they were eating, the lack of exposure to chemicals and all of that. It was the fact they felt connected and were valued.
Mhm. Brene
Way
Brown tells us we're hardwired for connection. Like that is, and to go back to that tribe, to the book Tribe, there are stories in there of people under this in the siege and just being bombed, but they were together and singing songs, and they reflect on it as some of the most connected, joyful times ever because there was this shared experience, there was community, they
right,
weren't alone. And we live now in a world where here's your property, here's my property, you do this, you figure it out. And then we kind of lose sight of those folks, right? These very precious people. And I think about it like, why did we not have life coaches 100 years ago, 60, whenever? We probably needed them 60 years ago, but because we had the generations, we had the
that's
neighbors and the
right.
aunts and the grandparents and the old biddy down the street, whatever. And yes, I'm being judgy here, but right, like we had these people that helped us navigate and inform our choices,
Right.
right?
And
Like
and
people that weren't mommy that we could go to and be like, I'm mad. And we would learn and we would grow. And I'm hyper overgeneralizing that, but that's the way my brain understands it.
well, there's a word
So,
for it. It's called interdependence.
mm,
And that's what we need more of,
hmm.
not independence.
Yes. Can you tell
Uh,
me, can you help me understand the definition of the two? Because I think I understand, but I want to be clear.
Yeah. So interdependence means you're connected to a group of folks who are helping you evolve, and it's intergenerational.
Mm,
So you have a friendship with someone in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, etc. You don't rely just on your peers. And of course, that connection with the peers is important, absolutely. But you're not sitting there trying to be the solo problem solver for yourself.
yeah.
And there is reciprocity, but there's that dependence on others
Hmm.
to help you evolve, help you get through the day, help you
Hmm.
experience life, and be participating in something greater than your own self, right?
Oh, oh, preach, preach. I love that answer. I really do because and I actually think it's a great segue into my next question because when you talk about, as you were talking about we can't do this alone. Don't just have your peers, you've got to have experts in different areas. I want to ask about your experience as an entrepreneur because I have to believe that that is not something you did independently because it's not easy, and to
No.
do the magnitude of work that you've done, but to build the things that you have in the way that you have. Tell me how
Right.
interdependence or lack thereof perhaps have played a role in your entrepreneurial journey.
Ooh, such a good question. And when you're building, when you're taking a vision and out of nothing, out of your imagination, and you're turning it into a product, a service that you are bringing to the world, and you get folks to buy it
Mhm.
repeatedly, that's huge. Okay, right there, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I always tell people no matter what happens when you launch a business, you always win
Mhm.
because the journey is the best personal development program you'll ever be on.
Truth.
And part of that is the fact that you cannot do it alone. You have to rely on others. And one of the best skill sets that a good founder will have is getting folks excited about her vision,
Mhm.
about the idea, and getting them to come on board at the lower salary, if not free.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to know, and that's why a lot of people get love working at a startup because everybody has a role and they're playing it and they're part of building something. Because
Mhm.
sure, it's been done before, but not by you and not for us. Seth Godin quote
Yeah.
there. But it's such a wonderful process. And any founder who tries to do it independently will fail. And that reminds me of I went to an all women's MBA program. And one of the first things they had to teach women, and this was my gen, so I earned it in '89. So my generation or Gen Xers was how to break down that independent performer that many women were indoctrinated to be.
Mm.
And so what they did is they put us into groups of 5 people and they gave us too much for just one person to do. Because a
Mm.
lot of women will look around the room and say, okay, who's doing this the best? I got to do it better than them. A
Mm.
guy is going to look around the room and say, who's doing it the worst? I got to do it better than them. So,
Wow. That's
and
so I was 9 at that time, right? And my view of women is probably very different. So that's really interesting to
yeah, because
hear.
we
But
weren't raised on teams. We didn't have the
right.
volleyball team. We didn't have the softball team. We didn't have all those teams.
No, that's where when we go back to like this is your property, this is your thing. Like this is what mom does in the home, and she does it all. And you want to talk about Hallmark cards? Let's talk about the Mother's Day Hallmark cards and their selflessness, and you can do everything, right? Yes, I can, but I don't want to. Right? But so I appreciate that perspective. And then it almost makes me, is that some of where that compounded with, I'm not sure all your views on this, but the perception of patriarchy as women have climbed whatever ladders they're
Right.
climbing, and there's this vicious competition at the top, right?
Well,
And
and I have so much grace for women and the competitiveness
yes,
because we have only been emancipated for a little over 100 years.
right.
It's only been 50 years since we could get a credit card in our own name and a mortgage. Okay.
God knows it.
We have had to compete
Mhm.
against each other to be taken care of by the male and our children taken care of by the male for thousands of years.
Yep.
This is not an evolution that's going to happen overnight to trust other
No.
women. And
And I
it's,
think that's why your 1989 perspective like really hit so home to me. I was like, gosh, I hadn't considered that step, that the 80s, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but did you first go to secretary school?
I did. I went to,
Okay.
absolutely. So
Which
I
I
didn't,
think is so, I'm going to be honest, like a little like beyond your time, like secretary school, that was a thing.
oh my gosh. And here's what was the beauty of that for me was that I then went and got jobs working for entrepreneurs. So
Nice.
I would be outside the office of a founder, right, as his
Awesome.
executive, always a his executive
Yeah.
assistant. And I would see, I was talking to investors. This is the head of this department. I saw how everything was run. And it was
Wow.
the best boot camp experience because
Wow.
and I was the gatekeeper, right?
Yeah.
So what a wonderful thing to have happen.
Yes.
And it really was the jump up that I was looking for before I
Interesting.
went on to grad school. So um, for me, it was a wonderful thing. But
So cool.
we don't always get the start in life. Women don't always get the start in life that men do. We can be sidetracked from college for many reasons. We could get pregnant and have a baby, get married. Things could happen. And we're not always on that career. We're not always on that career trajectory. It's a lot different now. But to go back to that team player aspect,
Mhm.
what the MBA program taught these women was that they had to rely not only on others to do the work that was due,
Mhm.
but at whatever level that person did it at and become okay with it. Because
Mm.
perfectionism is the death of everything, right?
Yes.
And women can get really caught up in it being perfect, the Martha Stewart
Mhm.
mentality. And so you learn a lot more about, you know, that's what that person did. That's how they showed up.
Yeah. No,
And
and I love, I think you said you show a lot of grace to women. And I absolutely, again, I know I was a little judgy and said it's vicious. It can be vicious, but
oh,
I
it is
do
vicious. Of
understand, I
course.
really do understand where they're coming from and how hard it must be. I mean,
Yeah.
I know you have some manufacturing time in the food world, but I spent time in, you know, garage doors and the construction world and the
Oh, you
way
got
that
to boss men
men,
around? Love
whew,
that.
I did get to boss a lot of men around. And I also had to interface and interact with a lot of men
Yeah.
who were multi-generational. We have a lot of third and fourth generation, we're a fourth generation, but a lot of multi-generational businesses. And it was definitely a learning experience of, wow, this is, I don't mean hard, but this is harder than I thought, right? To be a woman in this world and telling
Mm.
people from a very educated place what's up. It posed challenges and it really gave me a lot of compassion for what it must have taken to break through that glass ceiling
Well, not
and
only
to go
that,
through the next one and
yeah, this,
and stay there.
and I have to tell you, what we accepted as norm is so sexual harassment.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh. The
Hmm.
way men would touch us in the 70s and 80s and into the
Wow.
90s, we just took it as a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's how we have to do it.
Yeah.
It's so great that we now have boundaries, that we now
Thank
know
God.
how to shut that down
Hmm.
because it is never good for a woman's worthiness. It's been it's been a tough road. And so, I laugh because after years of sexism and racism, women now are slapped with ageism. It's like, wait a minute. But what's fascinating are all the white men in their late 50s right now and early 60s facing discrimination for the first time in their lives. Say
Oof.
what? Why am I not getting hired? What is this? And all these angry guys and everybody's kind of rolling their eyes going,
Wow.
yeah,
That's a great compassionate perspective as
yeah,
well for the first time in their lives. And simultaneously, here we come with hashtag me too, one of the things that got us to this place of no, don't touch me. And all the black light, all the cultural things that are happening. And
right,
so, I referenced the patriarchy earlier. I'm not mad at it, but we have to acknowledge it. But I don't want them to be beaten up over it, right? Because
right,
we didn't make these choices. We live in the world where choices were made and then we adapted and conformed. And it's what I hear a lot of happening you know, in your conversations, right? So
right.
adapting and conforming. But I guess I'm very curious, how has all of this, like when you were young, moving through, how has this informed your desire to be an entrepreneur, right? Like, because it's not, as an entrepreneur and a mentor of entrepreneurs, as I mentioned, I'm in the business of human potential. It sounds to me like you might be the same, right?
Well, first of all, as I often say, hello, my name is Ande. I've been unemployable since 1992.
I was hoping you were going to bring that up because I wanted to clarify.
And it's because it's one of my friends who always had a very senior role in HR at major corporations. She
Yeah.
would put her hand like a wand down my body. She goes, "We don't hire this."
Oh, wow.
And I'd be like, "Yeah, I know. I've
Lisa,
tried.
thanks.
I have really tried." And
Hmm.
and it's just my who I am.
Hmm.
I'm meant to be a CEO and in charge. What happened for me was last summer, I said, okay, this has been a great run. The startup world has been a great run, but I
Hmm.
want to get back to this community bit because yes, entrepreneurship can be a little bit too independent. And
Hmm.
especially if you're a solopreneur, you're looking around and you're saying, where are my people? Hello,
Where,
IT.
I
Oh,
want to
wait,
be
that's me.
inter. I want to be inter.
I want to be
Where are the
inter.
inters?
And with all due respect to startup founders, okay, they are hyper focused
Hmm.
and they're almost like the toddler in the sense that
Hmm.
it, if you're not here to help me, get out of the way, right?
Hmm.
And so the reciprocity and community as a mentor, it's really hard, and I love cheerleading with the best and, and helping him find, potential and giving that advice. But at the end of the day, I also need to fill Andy up. Andy needs to feel connected, not to talk in the third person like that. But
Yeah.
a lot of times we forget what our needs are. And so I realized that the startup community was never going to have that level of reciprocity for me, which
Mhm.
is why I turned to focus on the podcasting community, which does have time, which are all, everyone's working on a passion project as a
Right.
especially indie podcasters.
Yeah.
And so I looked for that and to that industry for connection and community. And this is what I encourage your listeners to. They're sitting there going, oh, well, it's nice that they're all talking about we need interdependence and connectivity, but how am I going to find those groups? I can tell you a few ways. Certainly,
Right.
Meetup, go on to Meetup and find out who's having some event that seems of interest to you
Mhm.
and go to it, whether it's virtually or in person. Just go, start exploring, start meeting new people and finding some like minded folks or a group of folks that are passionate about something that they're all working on together. Right. Um, and there's other events that might be in your neighborhood or in your town or close by in a city that you can go and just show up. And I know that takes a lot of courage, but it'll get easier to do that.
Yeah.
For me, I saw that there were a lot of different communities of podcasters around the country, but we didn't have anything for New England podcasters.
Hmm.
So I said, okay, one way for me
Let's
to
do it.
create community, intergenerational, would be to start a regional group of podcasters. So I did in March. I launched the New England Podcasters Group, and I did it selfishly for me. Yes, I'm comfortable running an event and
Yeah.
I'm not a Pied Piper, but I can get other people and brand ambassadors, so to speak, to get
Mhm.
excited. And what I learned was people were willing to drive from Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine to show up in person. I mean, nobody was more shocked than I at the
Oh,
first
good
in-person meeting
job.
who showed up, but they were craving
Connection.
in-person connection to talk about what
Mhm.
was working, what wasn't working, what can we learn, how can we grow as podcasters.
Mhm.
Are you a wannabe podcaster? You're thinking about it, come on into the fold.
Mhm.
You want to just hang out with podcasters and find out how we vibe, come into the fold. So
Awesome.
for those tuning in, think about there might be a community that you could create if you can't find one, and it might be for a cause. It might be to help young women or girls. It could be whatever that looks like for you. But when you become part of that community, it really is uplifting. And you
Mhm.
are celebrated while you're celebrating others.
Mhm. That is so good. And I want to add to all of that. Thank you so much for sharing. But I just want to add, I think we also, you mentioned perfectionism earlier and checking in, right? Constantly, regularly checking in. And I just want to invite everyone listening to take judgment out of this process, right? Let's take the judgment out because if your life has been very regimented and you know the next step in retirement 65 and da 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 da, I imagine it being very scary. Like I can't do that. Like wait, I'm just going to try to show up for a thing. I'm just going to go apply to work at Home Depot because I love gardening. I don't know. Right. But take the judgment out of that piece so that it's just an experience that you get to try because you get to try something else tomorrow if you're indeed retired. Right. And when we take the judgment out and playing pickleball as a good player or a bad player isn't the point, but the doing of the thing is the laughter, like just take out the judgment. And I mean that's at any age. Let's just be very clear. But I can see where when you have spent your life making decisions, it's got you here, it's got you there, that it could be very intimidating to try new things. What if I'm not good? What if I can't do it? What if nobody likes me? Because have you ever tried before?
And talk
Right?
about judgment. We have a huge judgment on failure. Whereas
Yes.
failure is the best gift.
It's
If you can look at
fantastic.
everything you try with that level of curiosity, but also as an observer,
Mm-hmm.
as a science experiment, okay, I'm going to mix this
Yes.
with this. Let's see if that works. Oh, that tasted terrible. I'm not doing that. Or, ooh,
100%.
I love that flavor. I love that smell, or I love that experience. And stay open to the magic happening. So if you get too caught up in the experience and get too
Mm-hmm.
focused on quote manifesting a certain thing, let go of that. Let the world surprise you with, "Oh, I didn't see that coming," right? Because when you stay open and you just tell your brain, "I'm interested. What if?" Right? It becomes
100%.
curious. And I was interviewing this wonderful woman out of Australia, and I'm trying to, and she said, be sage about your age. And oh, I'm trying to think. There was another thing that she said, but I can't remember. But it was really this wonderful way of giving the brain instructions to sort of go on out and figure it out because you're going to die on the hill of, or the tyranny of how. So just forget
Mm-hmm.
how is that going to happen. Look for the what, the why,
The
the curiosity.
possibility. And my friend Nicoa, she was one of my podcast guests, like 20 something. Um, but she says to add in like to that manifesting point of it has to look like this. She adds in the words or something even better,
Something even better.
right? I want this or something even better because if we're not again looking for the possibility and happiness only looks one way,
And
then
you're judging what if, and really nobody is on their deathbed saying, God, I wish I hadn't tried so many things.
I know. I know. People are always like, you have such an interesting resume and you've done all these things. And I'm like, I'm an opportunist with integrity. I'm not going to opportunist, to hurt people. But I want to live this. I want to try. Yes, I'll go do the thing. Yes, I'll go see the show. Like, yes, 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 because this is my one, what Anne Lamott, I think this is your one wild and precious life. What are you going
Right.
to do with it? Um, so I want to ask you, one of the things that we kind of talked about earlier is you do these pitch events,
Oh, I did
or you
those. I
did
didn't
the
do the,
pitch events.
yes, the pitch
And
events.
if I understand, it was 90 seconds. The person
That's
came
right.
in, you did this monthly, and they got to pitch their event. Having listened to all of those, what did the best pitches contain?
The best pitches brought in the passion of the why, because at the end of the day, the why is what gets you out of bed in the most discouraging, awful, darkest days of your life. I
Mhm.
mean, really, when you're a founder, you sleep like a baby. You wake up every few hours crying. Okay. It is hard work. So the pitch contained this within it, the why, but they also had real deep clarity of their minimum viable product,
Mhm.
meaning the core of what this business is and the problem it was solving for some group of people and why that group of people would buy it.
Right. The what's in it
So,
for them.
yeah, so you really understand, so that deep understanding of who they were solving the problem for
Mhm.
and why they were solving that problem. And then people say, how can you pitch a business in 99 seconds? Look, we had 4 minutes for audience questions and another 4 minutes of
Okay.
investor questions. So it becomes almost a 10-minute pitch. But yeah, you can tease everybody with deep clarity and you can do it in 3 slides.
Incredible. And what would you say, again, thinking about commonalities, the people who did not perform as well, what were they lacking? Obviously, their why, the problem they were serving, but was it a clarity? Was it a confidence? Was it
Oh, clarity.
experience?
Yeah, you, and it's interesting. Some folks get so excited about their solution
Mm-hmm.
that they need to focus on the problem they're solving.
That's great.
And so when you get really clear that your product or service is going to delight someone, it doesn't have to be,
Mhm.
saving someone's life. It could be something that delights people, makes life
Sure.
easier for them, whatever that is.
Right.
But those who were not able to articulate the business model, right? There's the combination of the why, that they have figured out what the product that their solution, but who are they going to delight?
Mhm.
Who is that group of people? And folks who didn't understand their audience, who did not understand their buyers, did not understand their, um, what I call the launchable market. The folks that when you first launch that you'll be delighting. Then there's your next segment, which it's never that $1 billion marketplace. You start off with that small niche of people who are going to be delighted, and then you work out from there.
Mhm.
It's not an easy thing to do,
Yeah.
but it can
Well,
be done.
but it's important, and I'm kind of digging in and asking those questions because my guess is if at when you hit the Renaissance age or whatever age, if we asked our people to spend the time and create their 99-second pitch, right? My gal
Right.
who's thinking about retiring, I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking maybe that's part of my work with her is, all right, go ahead. I want to hear your pitch of what life is going to be like, how you're going to make it happen, what interdependence, right? Like, how are you actually going to do this? What problem are you going to solve
Right.
for yourself?
For yourself. And be open to the fact that you're going to be in an experiment stage.
Yeah.
You're going to pull on threads, and it's okay to waste time on something that's wrong. So many people are coming out of a corporate environment where no, 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 you can't be wasting time. Everything is
Gosh, I hate that.
micromanaged. And instead you have to be okay with I've got 10 petri dishes here. I'm growing different ideas in each of them. Let's see what percolates, right? Let's see what comes up. And it's okay. There's a great example. An attorney for decades, high performance attorney. Everybody loved what she did with her gardens. Oh my gosh. And she said, well, everybody loves my landscaping. I'll start a landscaping business, right?
Wow.
So she starts a landscaping business, and like she's in it for maybe 2 months and going, this is awful. I am so lonely. I'm not talking to anybody. I'm out here with the plants. This is a hobby for me. This is a passion for my own home,
Mhm.
not for me.
Yeah.
Boom, closed it down, moved on. It's okay to do that. You're
Mhm.
finding out what does not work for you is the gift you're looking for, because then it informs what does work
Yes.
for you.
And I was thinking about that earlier because that's a really important part of the foundation I bring to my coaching relationships. I'm going to give you tasks and you're going to go try them. And as much as I want to celebrate when things go really well, more important is what doesn't go really well.
Right.
We have to talk, we don't want to talk about those things, right? We shy away from them. And I want to talk about them because if we can understand the things that aren't working, then we can focus more on the things that are and get closer to what we really desire and value.
That's right.
So, what that tells me is that we can constantly be upping our skills, upping our perspectives. As we kind of finish out our time today, I want to hit home on one of the things that really struck me and when we first connected, which was about the talent loss, the skill loss, the by not valuing this. And I love the language of fourth act, people who have come and done and now it's like time to go play in this fourth act, the climax. um what does that mean to our economy, to our culture? And I'm asking this because I want everyone at any age, whether it's a business leader, whether it's a young entrepreneur, whether it's, a stay-at-home mom, to understand why this is so important. This isn't just about grandma's going to die and she's going to be lonely. because that's awful. But this is also about what does that do to our big picture? Can you share some about that, please?
I sure can. In 2021, the World Health Organization did a study that found retirement was costing societies billions of dollars for so many reasons.
Mm,
Losing talented people in the workforce being one of them, but
mm,
also the illnesses that crop up when you quote retire. And that's why we like to focus on rewire. And
mhm,
what has to happen is our institutions, the folks doing the hiring, have to reframe how they view older adults
mhm.
because you've worked decades building up this incredible wisdom.
Yeah.
And so you're usually not flappable anymore because you've seen it, done it, been there, have the tiara. But also, you have been up against those problems. I mean,
Yeah.
business problems are all the same, right? You may need to use different technology and different talent pools, but the problems are all there. And those older
The
adults
critical thinking skills,
have
right? Like
figured
that.
that out and they don't get all freaked out so quickly.
Mhm.
And especially when there's production going on. A lot of them have been part of producing something.
Right.
And so by asking them to leave instead of saying, okay, we tend to want a 40-hour work week. Why don't we do a 25-hour work week for this group of people, this population, or a 30? Or maybe let's ask that employee, what level of
What's
work do you
best
want
for
to stay
them?
at now that you're over 60? And
Mhm.
what new skills would you like to learn? How can we help you up your game and add value here? How can we put you on a team? But it also has to be the other way as well. Those older adults have to learn to be okay with reporting to someone who's 20, maybe even 30 years younger than they are.
I bet
That's
that's tough.
okay too.
Well, I know that's tough. Been there, done that, but it's tough.
Yeah.
That's a tough, I mean, again, and thank you for bringing the compassion in because that's a
Yeah.
real piece. And when we're not communicating what the values are, whether it's a family system or a business system, if we're not clear on what the values are and how we're going to get there, if we're not curious about what we
Right.
have in our existing pool of talent, we can't move forward, right? To your point, we don't brainstorm. We don't dig into the weeds and say, okay, well, so this position, I can't seem to hire the person. I just keep filling it. Well, what if it's not one position? What if it's two? What if the reason you can't do it is because that person doesn't exist today,
That's
right?
right. Job sharing isn't for the working parent, right? Just for the working parent. Job sharing can be a couple of older adults. It's thinking outside the box and understanding that just because the clock strikes midnight at a
Mm,
milestone age does not mean that person is no longer valuable. That
mm,
all of a sudden, those 40 decades of lived experiences just go out the window. And
yeah.
this is why it's costing companies millions and billions of dollars as well, because they think they need to move those people out and bring someone in, quote, at a lower salary. I mean,
Mhm,
this is just crazy think. And what we have to say is skills based talent acquisition, right? Bring
mhm.
in somebody who's got the wisdom, the years of experience, and maybe they're using Excel spreadsheets and maybe they could be using something that's in the cloud. Who cares? Those are all learnable skills at any age.
Right.
Um,
Especially when the learnable skills bring value and they're important. It's not just learning how to use a fancy new platform because it's the trick of the week.
yeah,
And when we're clear on what's really important, we can capitalize on what we have with good communication.
right. That's why
So,
the movie The Intern is the perfect example.
gosh, I love that movie. I love that movie. I should watch that again. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is, and it ties in again quite nicely, is the value of communication. And as I understand, you've also talked a lot in some of your writings and on other podcasts about sex
I
and
have. You've done your
aging,
homework.
and I
Yeah.
do my homework,
Wow.
as well as menstruation and all these other things that
That's
we don't want
right.
to talk about. but that truly drive who we are, right? And I imagine that came with its own kind of cringe moment of, yes, I'm going to talk about sex. Yes, we're going to have this conversation. But
Thank you,
what I'm,
Michaela, for bringing this up. I love it.
yes, I mean, and so if you've got time, I want to know about that phase in your journey because here I am at 44
Hmm.
and I'm allegedly not perimenopausal or anything, but I've been dealing with this whole feminine issue for years. And I'm like, I don't want to deal with it anymore. So I've been really digging in. And the more I dig in, the more informed I become about my own body, which I've been dealing
Right.
with for years. The more I want to like scream on the mountaintops, like, why are we not talking about women's sex, menstruation, and all the things? Certainly the media talks about it. Certainly the
Hmm.
government talks about it. Certainly men talk about it all, but I don't get to. So tell
Yeah.
me about this.
Thank you so much for bringing this up. Um, so I remember the summer when both kids went off to summer camp, and I was thinking about how do long-term couples stay tuned in and turned on, especially women.
Mhm.
We know guys are visually stimulated, but women
And they have
are
Viagra if they
emotionally,
need it.
yeah, are emotionally stimulated.
Yes.
So I started pulling on a thread about how, and I was in my mid, I had my children late, so I was probably in my late 40s then. And how do couples stay intimate? And I pulled on that thread until I launched a platform called Bring Back Desire,
Nice.
how to get out of your head and back into bed. And it
I
was
love it.
for long-term couples who often, especially if you're raising children, you become really good parallel
Yeah.
players
Yeah.
and you're a great team effort, but the intimacy is gone. And then, oh my gosh, he or she is having an affair. How did that happen? Well, intimacy is important. And
Important.
women are usually indoctrinated to not talk about what turns them on.
Correct.
And so as I pulled this together, and there's a funny side story about how I entered a business plan competition here in Boston just to give myself a milestone. So I would create the business plan and really think about how do you do this? Because we're in the digital age, right? And digital
Mhm.
marketing, and how do I have an online presence as a 21 plus website
Right.
and all the things.
I love
And
that.
in puritanical Boston, but they're still talking about that pitch to this day. But the bottom line was that women, when they wake up in the morning, they hit the ground running because they have their to-do list. They know what they're going to be doing all day. And then when they finally crawl into bed at 10, because when a man says it's time to go to bed, he gets up and he goes to bed. A woman stops and checks the laundry, or does the grocery list, or does like 5 or 10 different things on her way to bed. But she lands into bed, she goes to kiss her darling goodnight, and he's looking at her from under his eyebrows, like, yeah. And she's like, oh, hell no, I'm
Yes.
tired. How do
Story.
you get,
And they're done that.
yep, how do you get sex on the brain?
Right.
And so that's what I pulled on. And what does that look like for different women? How do they get turned on? A Victoria's Secret ad is just not going to do it for most women.
Mm-mm.
And so I learned that it was through erotic stories that were emotionally safe sex,
Mm.
permission based eroticism. And it was often in the reading of that that helped women emotionally get turned on.
Mm.
And then all the different instruments that also, because women are indoctrinated that they're supposed to, just through penetration alone, be ecstatic, right? And be multi orgasmic and all the things.
Science
And
tells us otherwise. At least
oh,
the
oh,
data does.
please. And
I, oh my gosh, I listened. There's a little docu-series called Explained on Netflix, and one of the statistics in there talking about female pleasure was that allegedly only 23% of the female population says they've been reached orgasm through penetration.
alone.
It's a low number, and I'm guessing most of them are lying.
Yeah.
But, not to be too personal here, but like if we don't know that, then we think there's something wrong with us.
Well, and also, we may not want to talk to our partner. We may still have enough good girl shame, whatever you want
Yeah,
to call it, to talk to our partner about turns this on. But you got to find out what gets your juices going, because your juices do not end. Just follow the Instagram feed, Glorious Broads, and you will see that women are enjoying sex well into
great.
60s,
Because
70s,
that's
80s.
naturally my next question, right? Like, how do we keep that spirit, right? Like, so we're talking about me, 44, like all the learning I've done and hard conversations and all the things. But then how do we not put a bookend on our sexuality as we age?
Yeah.
What's
And
the trick?
especially as you're getting hit with different, every woman experiences menopause and perimenopause differently. And they are two different events. Perimenopause is what they're
Yay.
finally talking about, not what we talked about when I went through it. You called it menopause. No, perimenopause is that time period, and it can last for years for some women, where 1 minute they're homicidal, the next minute they're suicidal, the next minute they've got blood clots that could take over Chicago. I
Mm,
mean, it is a ridiculous time period. And managing that while managing life, while growing a business, doing all the things, it can be
mhm.
very challenging. And again, there's that grace, right? How do we do it? And if bioidentical hormones are going to do it for you, A-OK. There's a mythology that it's going to give you all the cancers. No.
Yeah.
It's,
Okay.
find out, is it progesterone? Is it
Okay.
testosterone? Find out. Go to the people who know, who have the
Stay
knowledge
curious.
base.
Don't just take it.
Be
Don't
curious.
just
And in
take
the
it.
meantime, find out what essential experience was. And I have to laugh out loud, folks, because for 4 years, I created videos on the Bring Back Desire YouTube channel. And I
I
thought,
like
do I
that
do
you're
a non
giggling and I can see you blushing a little.
well, do I do a non the courage it took to do this? Do I do a
Yes.
nom de plume, or do I just say, hey, I'm the gal next door? All right. I've got sons at home. And I just tell them, oh, I'm talking about menopause. They didn't know I was talking about sex. But I was. And I
Mhm.
laughed. And my husband wrote a few blog posts for me and we howled. But in my age group, I had women my age and older look at me and say, Auntie, this is the death of your career. What are you thinking about? Or I would go to networking groups and I'd have women my age, not the younger women, my age go,
Yeah.
well, what does your husband think about what you're doing? And I'd say, he loves it when I bring my work home.
Yes.
Bada bing, bada boom. Um,
Wow.
so
That is brave. That does take courage. But again, we need it because those women asking those questions have never dreamed of doing anything that wasn't within their husband's authority, potentially.
right.
Never dreamed of saying to another human, I want to know about sex. Right? Because I've been like, I used like my mom will tell you, she would mention sex and I would go like all like hide me in a bag. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to talk about this. Like, ew, like weird. But I do want to talk about it because it's a part of my life. And if I don't understand it, if I can't provide language and make sense of it, it's
Yeah. The biggest
not going to
sex
help me
organ
very much.
The biggest sex organ is between your ears, everyone. It
Mm.
is a state of mind. And so, as a woman, we have to find out what turns us on. And that's why I used erotic literature. So I had, the straight and narrow type of erotic literature, or I had really
Any
funny
favorites you
names.
can share?
Um, that's a great question. Yeah, there's so many out there. I would just say go to the Bring Back Desire YouTube channel.
And
All,
check.
all of that's up
Perfect.
there. But you're going to find, there's paranormal, right? There's the three of a kind. There's the group. There's no shame in all of that because many of the erotic authors out there are writing for women, by women. So they know what emotionally safe sex looks like. And it's things that you would never, ever do, but
Mhm.
it's titillating. And then you can look at your partner and you can have a really great time. You can have a lot of fun. You can have a deeper intimacy and you can do something that's really important for the aging body,
Yes, yes,
which is the
mobility.
orgasm, right?
Yes,
That's very good on
the
so
whole
many levels.
system. Oh, that's so good. And I really do hope that people continue to thrive in their bodies, to feel embodied, no matter
Right.
the age, right? And yes, that means today, friends, the coach and me can't help it. Eat well, sleep well, drink smart, right? Move your body, talk to people about your stresses. Don't carry this stuff with you because then you're just going to have to unpack it when you have the free time, quote, free time, when you're on that side.
Or the health issues will crop up.
Yeah.
And I want to say something about the sleep because I had insomnia for 40 years until I
Ouch.
had a local
And you did
doctor
all these things with insomnia?
from 26 to 66.
Damn, girl.
And I spent a ton of money trying to solve that problem because I am a problem solver. But
Yeah.
I was introduced to a doctor here in Boston who helps cancer patients at um, Dana-Farber, et cetera, with their sleep, children and adults. So he's a PhD, and he was the first person who described insomnia to
Mm-hmm.
me in a way that was absolutely spot on. And what we learned was that I don't need that 8 hours of sleep. It's like saying everybody needs to be the same height. If you're, average age of height of women is 5'6", what are we taking off of you? Same thing with sleep. You have to find out what's the right amount. And once I started seeing my life as I don't go to bed until 11:30 and I get up at 6,
Mm-hmm.
I sleep. I don't even think about sleep anymore. I
Isn't
was
that
constantly
something?
thinking I had to have the 8 hours.
Yeah.
I don't. In fact, 5 hours sometimes is all I'm going to need.
Yeah.
My body wakes up. And I used to go crazy on vacation. Like, why aren't I sleeping, 8 or 9 hours a night? I would be down to like 4 because my body does not need it. So I'm going to
Your
say to listeners,
perfectionism was rampant in there. No, I'm supposed to get 8, 9. I gotta get it. And
and if,
that anxiety building up of, oh my gosh, it's 11:30 now. I can't sleep till 9 o'clock. What am I gonna do? And no wonder you're not sleeping.
yeah,
And it's those tiny little things. And I always say to people, like, what's keeping you up at night? Let's just go right there. Let's talk about that stuff. And for you, it would be like, what's making you go to sleep at night? Why are you
how come
trying
I
to
can't fall
get
asleep? How
bed?
come I can't fall asleep? How come and I would say
Wow.
to I said to when I first met the Dr. Zhao, I said, well, my affirmation is that it's so easy for me to fall asleep because I will be changing that affirmation too. It's so hard for me to stay awake.
Yes, there you go.
I had a whole life
Perspective
opened up for me.
perspective is everything, right? But we have to challenge the why am I making these decisions in this way? Why am I trying to get 9 hours of sleep? Why am I trying to, you know, withhold who I am? And
Right.
at every stage in life, and this is really what I'm taking, is we have to be willing to ask ourselves, who are we? Who were we and where do we want to go with this thing? And then, of course, what resources do we have? What do we need to get there? We do some fear setting, but that's a process that can happen regularly, daily, and quite honestly, it should happen with great frequency. But we don't know what's possible. And what I love about
Yeah.
the work that you have done, because this isn't brand new, whether it was in your multiple businesses, in the way you're mentoring, I stand by it. I think you're in the business of human potential too.
Oh,
But
100%.
right, like I just see you. You know your worth, you know your value. I'm sure you've had struggles along the way to maintain that, but you lead with compassion
Yeah.
and
And
curiosity
empathy and empathy.
and empathy, and you have a really good time doing it.
Thank you,
It
Michaela. I
seems you have a
do.
really good time doing it. So, in my work, I separate joy from happiness and suffering, right? There's these two things, and then there's joy in the middle where we feel that self worth, where we feel that confidence. So, if that's how I define it, how do you define joy? And you can change your mind tomorrow. No
Yeah, no, no.
commitments
In
here, but
several ways, joy can be something simple of watching a flower bloom in my garden
of course.
to, experiencing an achievement that I
Mhm.
worked hard for, to just taking a breath and going, whew, this is amazing. But often it's a conversation. It's a connection with someone and having
Mhm.
some moments, some experience. I've always been into the experience. So, and I will always look for magic in life.
It
And
is
that's how I'm,
abundant especially when we're looking for it.
yeah,
And I thank you for that answer. And I just, want to reiterate the purpose of this podcast is to find people who use their gifts to help others grow, change, and serve, and to put a spotlight on it and to say, brava, my darling. And I really, really feel that with you because I do believe that we need our world today is going to be an entrepreneurial world. We don't have that corporate company. We don't want it anymore. Our next generations don't want it. But we have this whole landscape of people who are going to be living longer that have answers, that have rich information. And when we have the conversation, oh my gosh,
right.
we find the magic. It's, oh, I didn't know that was possible. So maybe we'll dub you like making magic at any age or any stage or something like that because the work that you're doing, the work that you're sharing is about the potential magic within. And I absolutely adore that.
Well, and I go back to it's all a journey. I first read the book Work with Passion in 1989, maybe 1990. And I've been seeking that for decades.
Mhm.
It's happening now at the age of 67. So it didn't happen in my 40s or my 50s, right? It's happening now. And a lot of folks I'm interviewing are actually saying this is the best stage of their life. So I want to give hope to anybody out there. If you aren't figuring it out under some
Mhm.
pressure of a milestone, I've got to have it figured out by I'm 30, time I'm 30 or 40 or 50. No, no, you don't have to have it figured out. Just be on the journey. And I know it sounds so cliche, but it's not the destination. It really isn't. It's how you are walking your path
Yes.
with joy and curiosity and an understanding that it's all building to your life. I mean, it's all this fabric that's coming together, this patchwork quilt, whatever you want to call it, that is you and uniquely you.
And I so appreciate that. And I'm a very visual person. So the image of snuggling up in my later years with that beautiful patchwork quilt feels really good. And I guess as my parting thought there would be to be intentional about the patches we allow in, right? Because
Yeah.
the world is going to throw this patch and that identity and that label. Are you going to sew that in, or are you going to say, not this one, not this one?
Or, and you may run up against this too, sometimes we have to remove those who tolerate us versus celebrate us. Because
Yes. Yeah.
toleration is so toxic. And for
Yes.
me personally, I had a perfectly fine family that I grew up in, but I was tolerated
Mhm.
and bullied. And I finally, at the age of 58, I just said, you know what, I'm done. I
Yeah.
can't continue to do what I want to bring to the world with this level of toxicity in my life. And I know people say, oh, well, you have to tolerate it because it's your family.
No, you don't.
You don't.
Nope, you have
And
to communicate. You have to be clear. You have to say, here's the boundary. Are you willing to play in my boundary? And if you're not, here's what I'm going to do because I will keep myself safe.
right.
You
And
know?
interestingly, no one fought for me to stay, you
Well,
know.
it's one
So
of those, there's no one-way liberation, right? So
right.
they were probably like, oh, we have to tolerate her. And you're like, oh, I have to tolerate them. But because we're family and we always do,
Right.
it's like, okay, maybe not.
And
So,
and that's part of the self exploration and the discovery and the curiosity of what works. And it was very freeing. It was almost 10 years ago. And
um, I'm proud of you because that's bold.
oh, yeah, nobody
Oh,
talks
like
about that. Society poo-poos that big time.
to love yourself enough to say this doesn't serve me is bold today.
Those were the exact words, Michaela. Thank you.
Oh, well, I see you, girl.
Oh.
And I hope that you remember all the ways that you have not properly, healthily, in a more healthy way,
Mm-hmm.
connected and created spaces where people get to be seen and get to feel the power of magic. Because
Right.
I want to live my life strong and proud and joyful. And I don't want to do it alone. And I don't want to be the only one out having fun, So I want my friends to figure this stuff out too. So all that
Oh,
being said, you have proved so much of what I was hoping, not proved,
oh,
but demonstrated so much of what I was hoping to talk about today
thank you.
because I want all humans, all beings to feel seen and represented. And this is a very overlooked, it's overlooked generations, the Renaissance and the legacy and whatever comes after that. But at the end of it all, what I hear you say is connection with self, of checking in, connection with others, and just try, right? There's no timeline, there's no bookend.
And also when you look at yourself in the mirror, come on,
Yeah.
you know, you're
So
old, and older, but today is going to be the youngest you'll
yes,
ever be.
yes, it doesn't get better from here if you think aging is bad. You're just going to continue aging. So I saw you have a little blue hand clapper. I'd like to do something with you real quick. You can clap that if you want.
Okay.
Yay. One of my favorites is if you could take one of your hands and put it up in the air and take the other hand and give yourself a high five.
High five.
Doesn't it feel so fun and silly?
It's delicious.
It's delicious. And I think you are an absolutely beautifully wonderful human
Oh,
being. And I'm so
thank
grateful
you.
that we had the opportunity to connect today and to share you with my audience. And heavens knows, I hope this is not the last time we connect.
Oh, and I am so grateful you're out there as a resource for so many people because
My
the
pleasure.
biggest mythology is that you can make these transformations on your own.
Mhm.
Someone
I
like Michaela, you're able to spotlight in someone something that they cannot see. So anybody who hires you has made an excellent decision.
thank you very. That means a lot to me. This is a woman who's handled a lot of businesses, folks.
Yes,
So I
ma'am.
appreciate that. And with that, I will say to you and to everyone listening, wherever you're off to today, hope you make it a great day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap on another episode of And All the Things. If you enjoyed today's show, please like and follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. If you really liked it, please go ahead and rate it. Then think about who in your life might also need to hear it and any of the other episodes we have shared. Then share it with them. When you find something meaningful, something valuable, you've got to share it and pay it forward to those you care for. Thanks for joining us, and follow along on Instagram at MyJoyCoach to see more of me, your host, Michaela Burdyshaw. And as always, make it a great day.